Into it. Julia, what did you make of the opening session of the new week, the shortened week?
James, Kung Hei Fat Choi, or in Korean, Sebuk Mani Badaseo. And I guess that was the biggest impact on our market today, the fact that we did see the Lunar New Year and most markets around the region closed. In fact, the only key markets around the region open today was Japan, which was just looking quite flat, and the Australian market, which was down by 0.3%, simply following the US futures, with the S&P 500 futures down by 0.3%. So as you can imagine, extremely light volumes. We saw only $3 billion worth of stock being traded. That's compared to last week, where we finally saw that $4 billion traded mark being cracked, and today it was about the two biggest sectors of our market, the material space and the financial space. If we have a look at the material space, some big losses here. We saw Fortescue down by 3.7%, and our biggest stock, BHP Billiton, down by 0.6%. The big four also closing lower, but it was interesting to see Macquarie bucking the trend. It was up by 1.8%, and QB Insurance, after its recent losses, up by 2%. So altogether, we did see losses in the materials and the financial space, but an extremely quiet session.
So we break for Australia Day on Thursday, but what are you going to be watching? Are there any key events or issues you'll be keeping an eye on?
James, any action here domestically will be in the first half of the week on Tuesday and Wednesday, and tomorrow we see a raft of production numbers coming through. So it will be the mining area which is in focus. We get our quarterly production reports coming through from the likes of Alasa, Aquarius, Discovery, Metals, also Newcrest Mining, Pan-Ost and Oil Search. So it's going to be a huge day tomorrow. And then on the economic front, we saw PPI numbers out today, but on Wednesday we will get an inflation read. So that's the big event here domestically. And then for the rest of the week, of course, domestically, we're asleep. We've got the Australia Day holiday on Thursday. A lot of people taking that Friday off as well. So it is expected to be quiet in the second half of the week. But outside of the region, it's a very busy week. In the US, we see the Federal Reserve meeting. That's going to be watched very closely. We'll also get some GDP numbers, the State of Union address, and of course, Europe in focus. Over the weekend, we were watching the Greece negotiations with the private creditors, and it looks like the chief negotiator has walked away from Athens on Saturday without a deal being closed. So the market watching that Greek situation very closely. We'll get a bunch of reads on European PMIs this week, and of course central bank action as well. We see central bank meetings from the likes of New Zealand, Japan and India. So altogether, the action in Australia will be in the first half of the week, and we won't be trading on Thursday. We'll be pretty dead on Friday as well, but a lot happening elsewhere.
Julia, where do you think the market, and I suppose our market, the Australian market, the sentiment is towards, where is it in relation, I should say, to Europe? I mean, do you think that we are building a thicker skin, if you like, to some of the issues emanating out of Europe, or is it still very much the, I suppose, the be-all and end-all?
The problem with the problems in Europe is that it's very much a binary outcome. If we do see a disorderly default coming out of Greece, that would be a huge negative for the market. But if we see a restructure deal, then a lot of the European backgrounds may fade into the background for the time being. But of course, if we have a look at Europe, we are coming up to some important dates. We see the EU finance ministers meeting and then the EU summit on the 30th of January. But if we have a look at the year to date so far, it's really been the commodity space which has been outperforming. We've seen massive performances from the underperformers last year. Companies like White Energy, which were down 89% last year, but have managed a bounce back of more than 40% in the last 3 weeks. And that's really because we've seen a rally in commodities in 2012. We've seen copper prices, nickel prices, aluminium prices coming back quite strongly, and the real impetus behind that is not only the risk on trade and the risk rally that we've been seeing in markets, but also expectations that we are going to see China easing monetary policy over this Chinese holiday, the lunar holiday. So the market's watching China very closely, and expectations that we will see easing in monetary policy has been driving some of the commodities very strongly. Of course, for the next month, nothing really coming out of China, so the commodity space not expecting to see much action unless we do see China coming out with an interest rate cut.